Salesforce development, lesson 22. And today we're going to be discussing Apex batch processing. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, as you can see from our screen, we're in the flight management application that we've been working through. And the goal of this is to write an Apex batch program to delete records. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through and delete some records from our project, and we're going to choose one of the S objects to delete the records from. And a lot of times you want to do this. So let's say you want to clean out your org. Actually, a better one to start with, instead of that one, I'm going to go back. Let's go to the customer service, because that's pretty much, we can at least start cleaning some of that out. All right, so, or if you make a mistake on an import, so you have to delete all your records and re-import it, that's another reason why you'd want to do that. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So first thing we want to do is we possibly, if we look at our reservations, let's look at all the reservations here. Here we have all our reservation records, and let's say we want to just kind of clean everything out and start from scratch again. So first thing we want to do is we want to, in order to get started in deleting this, we have to learn how to query for these records. And for that, we're going to go to the gear icon up here and click Developer Console. This pops up this nice little developer console that you can use. And one thing you'll notice is there's a query editor tab down here at the bottom. So we're going to click there. And what you can do is you can enter what's called a SOCL query. And what a SOCL query lets you do is it basically lets you write, if you're familiar with SQL, it's kind of very similar to SQL, where you actually go ahead and type in, the syntax is very similar. You want to do select, let's say the ID and the name from a particular object, right? Then you do the from clause. And then you have to give the object. So what you need is you need the API name of the object that you want. So easiest way to find that is, since we're in reservations, let's see, we can click Edit Object. That brings us to the Object Manager, and we can see the API name of the reservations is this reservations _ C. So I'm going to copy that, and then I'm going to go back. I think I need to go back to Developer Console. Here we go. Now I'm going to paste that in, and that's my reservation. So if I click Execute, it goes ahead and lists all of my records here. So this is going to be the SOCL statement. And again, it's similar to SQL. SQL stands for Structured Query Language, and SOCL is Structured Object Query Language. So it's very similar. So here we're going to go ahead and copy that SOCL statement. Now I'm going to go ahead and go back to our Visual Studio Code, because we're going to go ahead and actually start from here to create our Apex class that's going to delete the records. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to, you need to go to the Force app folder, and then there's a main default, then all the folders for all the different objects, components that you can create. So Apex is under the classes component, because you have to, in Apex is all Apex classes. And as you can see here, I kind of already created one, so I'll show you an example of one that I did for airports, because I needed to kind of delete the airport. So this is kind of the basic structure for it. So here, usually when you generate it, it puts this with sharing clause on there, and what that does is it respects any sharing rules. So if you can only see certain records in an object. You will only be able, when you query it, you will only be able to query those records that you have access to. So it's basically security, record level security. So here you have the class, then usually you give it a name, and here this is to delete the airport records out. And then it's database batchable, S-object, because this is an interface that it's implementing, and so you need to implement the database batchable, and then S-object means that it works with any S-object. Then there's basically 3 different methods that you have to implement as part of this interface. The first method is the start. This contains your query that you're going to use to query the records that you're going to delete. So this SOCL statement here is just querying every SOCL statement, every record in the airport object. The execute goes through, and it basically, the scope variable sends a list of all the records that were queried to this method. And then what we do here is we just say, hey, if there's more than 0 records, in other words, this is not empty, then we're going to go ahead and delete all the records. So we just do a delete scope, and it deletes all the records in this list. And usually what it does is in a batch is when you kick off a batch job, you say how big the batch is. So basically, how many records you want to process in one time. So let's say you had 1,000 records, and you kicked off the batch and said only process 20 records at a time. So this will contain at most 20 records, and then when you delete, it's going to delete 20 records, and then it's going to fire again, delete the next 20 records until it's exhausted everything that you've queried from this query here. And then the last thing that happens is there's a finish. A lot of times you'll do things to clean things up. Here we don't have to do anything, so I just put debug statements that says all, actually shouldn't be tasks, should be all airports were deleted or something like that. Okay, so let's go ahead and start one from scratch, because we're going to be deleting our reservations. So we're going to go ahead, if we right click on here, you're going to go all the way down the bottom where it says create Apex class. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Then we're going to give it a name, and again it's going to be delete reservation batch. I'm going to go ahead and do that. I don't need a constructor, so I'm going to get rid of that. And then this is going to be implements database batchable, and you see it's using I'm using the nice thing with Salesforce DX, it comes with AI that helps you. If I hit tab, it will finish some of my stuff. Now I don't care for this database stateful or this raises platform events, so we're going to get rid of this part of it, because I just need the batchable piece. So I went ahead and got rid of that. That looks good. So next thing we're going to do here, oh boy, what happened here? Oh, escape. Let's see, Command Z. Yeah, there we go. All right, so now we're going to do step 2. Yeah, this is AI putting this stuff in, so I have to ignore some of this. The next step, and again, if we go back to our delete airport, for as an example, it's pretty much the start. So I need to say public. Yeah, that's pretty much nice thing. The AI finishes a lot of the stuff for you. So this is good, and then it's suggesting this return statement, which is pretty close to what I want. So I'm going to hit tab here. Now, one of the things that I don't want to delete the one in the last 30 days, I want to delete everything. So let's go ahead and delete this part that we don't need because we want to delete everything. And we're good. Okay, the next part is the public execute. And it finished that off nicely for me. And it's also finishing off everything in here. So our AI was very useful in that it generated these, it kind of finished our methods for us, kind of guessed what we needed based on the name and what I've done before. So this looks good because here we're doing our query. This deletes all the records, which is what we want. And then we also checking to make sure we have anything in there. And then finish doesn't do anything except says all reservations were deleted. So that looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. So I'm going to go ahead and going to deploy this to the org. So one of the options here says deploy the source to org. So we'll go ahead and deploy it. And what this does is just deploys this method here, or it just deploys the class to delete it, but it doesn't run the code. It just deploys it, so now it's out in there. You can see down here in our output that it was successfully created. So we're good there. So the next thing we have to do is we actually have to launch or run this batch to do the deletions. So how are we going to do that? Let me go ahead and we'll go back here. This is the developer console. So I'm going to get rid of this. If you look, here's our reservation. Oh, I'm sorry. We actually needed that developer console. So let's go back here. Okay, usually what you do is you run your anonymous Apex by going to the debug menu, click open. Then what we're going to do is there's a database, or there's system, I think it's system. Execute right now it escapes me, so I'm gonna have to run run a Salesforce batch database execute batch. Just want to make sure that I got my syntax correct. Let's go back to developer console. So it is database execute batch. First thing you have to do is you have to create a, before we do that, let's go ahead and create an instance of our class. So the class we want, to go back here, is this delete reservation batch. So I want to create an instance of that. So I'm going to go ahead there. We'll give it a, this is the class type. So when you create an Apex class, it creates a type. So you can create a variable of that type. So database reservation batch is the type, creating a variable called batch of the type of delete reservation batch. And then to create an actual instance, use the new keyword and then the name of the class. So now it created an instance of the database reservation batch class called batch. And now when you go to execute the batch, you pass it the instance variable, which is batch, and then you're going to pass it how big of a how big you want the batch to be. Now, just for demonstration purposes, if we go back here, we only have about 5. So I'm going to make our batch very small. And what this is going to allow us to do, so I'm going to make the batch size 1. So it's going to delete 1 record at a time. And I'm going to do this to show you that it's going to create a batch size. Basically, it's going to create a batch of 5 because the batch size is 1. So it's going to create 5 batches, 1 for each record that it's going to delete. So it's going to calculate that out. Normally, we wouldn't do a batch this small unless there were issues with a lot of, if you had a lot of triggers or flows that ran that may cause issues, then you would have a very low batch size. But in this case, batch size of 1 is reasonable just for demonstration purposes. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this. We'll execute it. Hopefully that deletes it. All right, looks like that executed. Now, a couple places where you can see the output. Here you can see our batches run, and you can see there's 5 batches that it created. And what this is when you run things in the developer console, you can actually see the logs being printed out here. So if I click on one of these logs and scroll down, you could see our executions, that things are getting deleted 1 row at a time. And that pretty much shows you that. You can also the RW debug stuff isn't showing up, but that's okay. All right, so that's good. So let me go back to the reservation here. If I go ahead and refresh this, all my reservations are gone now because I deleted them. And then the other thing I want to show you was going to setup. Is you can actually see everything. If you go to Apex Jobs in the environment, you can actually see our batch ran and at what time it ran. So here's the date and time that it ran, and here you have your the job type. That's a batch Apex. Status is complete. How many batches? Because we did 1 record at a time, it created 5 batches, and it processed them all, no failures, and then it even shows you the Apex class that was run, and the completion date, which ran fairly quick, so it didn't take long to complete. Okay, so I think that pretty much sums this up. So if you have, again, if you enjoyed this and you want other people to get to know, please make sure to share, like, or subscribe this video so that other people can know about it. Thanks again, and until next time, see you later.